But now I want to have a conversation about Fox News Channel, as we've been doing for a couple of days now. The White House has gone on the warpath and attacked Fox News Channel for not being really news, as you guys know. And Glynis MacNico, if I'm pronouncing that right, and she'll tell me in a second, is going to join us because she wrote in Mediaite.com, why isn't the MSM, mainstream media, complaining about White House attacks on Fox? Glynis, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You keep referring to Fox News as a news organization, and I agree completely with the White House. It is not a news organization, and that's the problem. Now, and by news, I mean straight news, where they try to cover things as they are, roughly speaking. And I know that I'm not expecting perfection here. Some bias creeps in here and there. But take what they did with the 9/12 protests and the gay rights protests. Very similar numbers in the number of protests. They're both in Washington, D.C. They're both in the span of about a month. For the 9/12 protests, the teabag protests, they went nuts. They covered it. They literally had a producer cheerleading on the sidelines, telling the crowd when to cheer. For the gay rights protests, they didn't send a single camera crew. Do you think this is a news organization?
I do think in the larger sense, Fox News is a news organization. I'm certainly not going to defend certain decisions they've made and the 9/12.
Certain decisions?
Yes, I don't think it's fair to damn an entire news organization. There are real journalists employed by Fox.
Name them.
I'm sorry?
Name them. Maybe Shep Smith?
I would absolutely argue Shep Smith. I would also argue Major Garrett. I would argue a number of their sort of lesser-known reporters that are sent out into the field. I do think that
Glynis, look, did they hire some people that worked in the field of television journalism before? Yes, they did. Now, whether that's actual journalism is a whole separate conversation, all right? So they hire some of these news actors that have acted on other stations before, but then it's not that question. The question is, what do they tell them to do? Dan Moody, who is the vice president of news at Fox News Channel, wrote a memo, for example, after the 2006 elections, asking his reporters to find news of Iraqi insurgents celebrating Democratic victories. Does that sound like a news organization?
I think we're having maybe two different conversations here. I'm certainly not suggesting that in certain instances, and in maybe frequent instances, but the larger point here is, do we want a government that is attacking a large media operation that obviously is enjoyed by many people in the country, as you can see by the ratings they get on certain shows? I think that is
all right. So that's point number two. And on that, I also disagree. Do I want them attacking Fox News? Hell yeah. Now, I'll tell you why. Because if you don't answer the call, and now they send one swift boat issue after another, death panels, Acorn, et cetera, you know the list. The list goes on and on while they're pretending to do news. If you don't answer that, then you're going to get swift boated just like John Kerry did. And you don't know a thing about politics. When somebody punches you in the mouth, you punch them back.
Whose responsibility is this right now? Because the ratings that Fox News is enjoying is not an accident, and they're not enjoying those ratings because of the White House's lack of response. They're enjoying those ratings because they've touched a nerve. Now, that is not the White House's responsibility. We don't live in a nanny state here. There are plenty of news sources out there should the public choose to go and find different ones.
Yeah, look, again, they're not news. I mean, seriously, Glynis, let's go back to that for one quick second, then I really want to talk about point number two. But do you really, when you turn on Fox News, do you think that they're just happen to be covering the story of the day? And look at that, they think the story of the day is, again, Acorn. Really, among all the things that are going on in the world, the biggest news story that their news anchors are talking about is over and over again Acorn. Are you under the impression that that's really what they think is, hey, as journalists, we think this is the biggest news story of the day? Or do you think maybe Roger Ailes, who ran Nixon's campaign and Bush's campaign, is actually pushing them to cover Republican propaganda to hurt the president?